Great. So, yeah, we're going to talk today to the president of the American Chamber of Commerce in Germany, Frank Sportolari. Mr. Sportolari, thanks ever so much for agreeing to talk to us.
Thank you for having me. I'm very delighted to see your interest in our activities.
Yeah. The first thing I'd like to talk about is your organization just published a survey of the top 50 companies in Germany. And those firms gave Germany an even better rating as a business location in 2020 than in 2019. What was the reason for the improvement?
Well, I don't know. It's sometimes there's fluctuations that are a little bit difficult to explain. I think the main point is that U.S. companies, for a long time that we've been doing this, have consistently given Germany a very high rating, with the exception of a few areas which I can discuss if you want. But it's not an anomaly that all of them say we're very, very eager to continue doing business in Germany, and the ones that are here continue to invest, and many other companies, are looking very strongly at setting up their European operations in Germany.
And might this have something to do with a favorable view of Germany's response to COVID?
Well, that's certainly, by the way, yes, that was one of the factors. I mean, that is maybe just another example of the fact that U.S. companies view Germany, if I can kind of condense a lot of things you hear, as a well-managed company. There's a view that the government in Germany is very stable, and that there's respect for law, legal processes. There's a respect for intellectual property, etc. There's just a very good atmosphere in Germany that's attractive to American companies.
Mm-hmm. Your report finds that IT and service industries are particularly benefiting from the COVID-19 crisis. Could you expand a little bit on that?
Well, certainly there's, if you look at what sectors have been hit hard by this and which sectors have, you don't want to use the word benefited in a way because it sounds, but face it, some people actually had gotten some advantages through this. Certainly, the world was on a trajectory to become more and more digitalized. So it's certainly no surprise that IT companies would have an opportunity to, sell their services more in this environment, as people are forced to send, thousands. I don't know how many people were sent to home offices throughout Germany during the pandemic. Many of them are still there. People are looking for solutions and ways to make their work more effective. You also have the logistics industry, which is actually the third largest employer in Germany, which performed very well and was recognized, as an essential part of the economy, and helped keep things moving. And then you had large retailers, online retailers. People, quite frankly, ordered a lot more stuff, and so their sales went up. And those are the branches that really did well, versus some people that didn't have the same opportunity to reach their customers anymore.
Mm-hmm. And you've sort of given me the next point. One of the things that happened in this new survey is that for the first time, Amazon has overtaken Ford as a U.S. company that's doing the most turnover in Germany. Do you see this as part of a longer-term trend, or is it just something that's happening because COVID is making us all buy lots of stuff online?
Well, it certainly sounds very symbolic, doesn't it? The online retailer overtakes the, traditional 100-year-old car company. I think, though, if you look back, say back to the 90s, what were the biggest listed companies? They were all in, utilities, energy, chemicals, automotive, and now we've got FANG, right? The Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, whatever it is. It's a trend that's going to keep going. I don't think that's going to be stopped anytime soon. So I guess we should not be surprised by that development. Certainly, it came, I think, sooner than it would have due to the disruption caused by the pandemic and the need for more stuff, to be shipped to people's homes.
Germany is a country that tends to have a little bit more, or maybe even a significantly greater amount of government involvement in the economy. Normally, when you think of U.S. companies, you think of sort of maverick capitalists who want to go out and conquer the world. What aspects of the relationship between the state and the economy in Germany do you think U.S. companies like?
Well, as I said, what's appreciated here is a very clear legal framework for doing business, stability in government, and the educational system, which in a way you can say, the government runs that, so that's another positive for the government. Those are all things that people see very favorably. To your point, though, there's consistently voices raised around the fact that the government does hold stakes in major companies in a way that would, in most countries, in the US certainly, not be looked on very favorably. And that is always an issue that we like to keep an eye on and help our members competing in those respective areas make sure there is a level playing field, right?
Speaking of playing fields, where do you see the niches, the spots on the German playing field where U.S. companies, with sort of typical U.S. strengths, where should they be looking to get involved?
Well, I think one thing that speaks very much to Germany's favor is its very, on top of everything else, is the central location, right? And that's something that you're not going to lose. Other countries aren't going to get closer to the center of Europe. Germany really is right in the center of Europe, the crossroads of north and south traffic. We've got the Rhine River, which is the major navigable river in Europe. Those are all very big natural things that speak very well to Germany always playing a central position in connecting the transatlantic economies. And I think the ability of companies to set up here relatively easily compared to other companies, those are things that are always going to encourage people, if they're looking to set up their European operations, to look at Germany very favorably. And I think a large part of what gets done here is that people say, okay, we're going to come to Europe. Where in Europe is our headquarters going to go? There might be some other place chosen for tax reasons, but we see by the number of major companies that locate in Germany that it's, quite frankly, a very, very attractive place for companies to be. So I think American companies will continue looking at Germany. I applaud the efforts that Germany makes, with the various programs they have, the various initiatives they have, both at the federal and at the state level, with active, salespeople in the U.S. helping companies make their investment decisions, providing them guidance, steering them towards any grants that are available. Those are things that are all really, really helpful. And I think Germany does those very well. And sometimes a little surprised that other companies don't kind of have a look at what's going on here and figure out how they can do it themselves, because I think it's a real, real leg up for Germany.
Mm-hmm. And are there any particular sectors where you'd say, if you, let's say, if you work in logistics, or if you work in sort of digital industries, any particular sectors that should really be looking hard at Germany as a place for expansion?
Well, can't, to turn the question around, I can't think of any sector that shouldn't be looking to internationalize. And I can't think of any sector that wouldn't want to come to Germany, be it beverages, be it autos, be it whatever. I mean, some sectors are more highly competitive than others. The automotive market is certainly one, for example. But when you look, sometimes there is an American success here with what was it, the PT Cruiser that kind of took the market by storm some years back. It's a good marketplace. It's very, can't say it too often, stability is what people look for. And I think anyone interested in doing any kind of precision manufacturing very much values the German educational system. I don't know if there's any other country in the world where you can put up your shingle and say, I want people to do this, and you'll get those people that have been, completely and thoroughly trained in that area showing up with a diploma. You don't have to invest as much in training on day one to get your people to do their jobs correctly. And those, make it very, very interesting for American companies.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we could look at the other side briefly. Well, what's the mood like now among German companies that are doing business in the United States or thinking of expanding to the United States?
Well, it's a little bit less optimistic, but still, it's surprisingly strong interest in doing business in the U.S. It's not surprising. The U.S. is a fascinating, large market that I think anyone would be foolish to ignore. We sometimes get caught up in the turbulence that's swirling around in Washington with tweets and a 6-hour news cycle and everything else. But when you get out into the real world where people live and work, it's a totally different picture. And we at AmCham try and maintain strong relationships at the state level, which means we talk a lot to governors and to their economic advisors. And we've had governors on the line who are known for being arch Republicans, very supportive of some of the, of the president's policies, but who on their own would say, please, come here and set up your factory. We're very interested in getting your investment and your manufacturing jobs. There's no one who says, no, we don't want you. And I will say even about President Trump, he's not anti-trade. He's anti-trade on what he feels are terms that are not favorable to the U.S. I mean, there's certainly a lot to be discussed and debated there, and there's certainly a lot with his tactics and methodology that we as a chamber are not in agreement with, but we're very much in agreement. And I think in Germany, anyone would understand the desire to have a strong manufacturing sector is certainly understandable, right? And as I said, any company wanting to go to the U.S. and create jobs and participate in the market there will find that they're very, very welcome.
So finally, I would ask you to look into your crystal ball. If we assume that there's not going to be a major corona lockdown again of the sort that we experienced this spring, where do you think U.S.-German trade relations, economic ties are going to be in, say, 6 months' time?
Well, in addition to Corona, we also have the 10 days from now, as we speak, is the election. And certainly that will be a major data point in seeing how things are going to proceed. President Trump has made very clear what he wants to accomplish. And as I said, we're not, as a chamber, we're not at all political. We have no political ties. Our goal is to strengthen the transatlantic relationship. I think a lot of people are surprised when you consider the size and the scope of it. People are surprised, and they should be surprised, that there's no treaty, there's no agreements formalizing that relationship. And we need to continue to work towards that regardless of who wins the election. Certainly, regardless of who wins the election, there'll be certain points that need to be worked on. And we would hope that, hoping that Corona, the issue there is solved, and in 6 months we can get a little bit back to business as usual. There's been a good stretch of time here where obviously there hasn't been a lot of work done in trying to iron out some of the issues that have caused a bit of the disturbance between the U.S. and Europe on the trade front. I think a couple of things need to happen. Europe, quite frankly, in our view, needs to be a little bit more consistent and have a more coherent trade policy. As we all know, trade is a European competency. When we were in Washington a couple of years ago, we had a meeting with Wilbur Ross, the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, and he said, hey, if we were going to do a deal with Germany, we could get it done in 6 weeks. I don't know if that's quite true, but certainly the fact that, so many countries have to be in agreement with any deal that's done makes it very difficult, particularly when inside Europe even we don't always have agreement among a lot of the policies. And in particular, I think agricultural policy will be a very difficult issue to solve between the US and Europe, but it's one that's really, really important for the US. Anyone who's been in the US and flown or driven from one coast to the other knows it's a huge farmland. And every state in the United States has agriculture. It's an important export. And that's certainly an area where President Trump had said he wants to see more trade being done with Europe. And there's, a lot of reasons why it's not being done now. And I think we need to work very, very diligently. It'd be nice if tempers would go down a little, if we'd get a little bit more, I don't want to say more professional because it's professional, but maybe a little bit calmer, and really try and figure out where a common denominator is that we can all agree to. It'll be difficult, but it can be done, and it has to be done because the importance of this trade relationship is just so big that we can't afford to have it deteriorate.
Well, great, Mr. Sportolari. Thank you ever so much for talking to us and sharing those insights. That was certainly quite interesting, what you have to say about what needs to be done as well. Yes, so thank you very much for your time.